In the world of Fallout 4, are the Commonwealth Minutemen the best faction to end the game with? What's up guys, Acerthorn here. Welcome to another lore and discussion video. This series focuses less on cracking jokes every 6 seconds, and more on well thought out, heavily scripted, intellectual, and serious story analysis. For those of you who are subscribed to my channel for my jokes and sense of humor, and who aren't interested in any thought-provoking, serious story analysis, I recommend you turn back now. You have been warned. Now, from a gameplay perspective, the Minutemen are among the most annoying factions in the game. They consist almost entirely of Radiant quests, and no matter how many times you bolster your settlements with over 5,000 defense, there's always some asshole who gets kidnapped and held for ransom. Hands down, this is probably the worst faction that Bethesda has ever designed from a gameplay standpoint, surpassing even the Oblivion Mages Guild in terms of overall boringness. Heck, the Oblivion Mages Guild questline was repetitive beyond sin and devoid of character development from any of the NPCs in the faction, but at least it had a finite length to its misery. But in lore, the Minutemen are considered by many to be the best faction in the game to side with for their last quest, if your primary concern is building a better tomorrow for the Commonwealth. The most prolific video on YouTube that directly tackles this question is a video made by YouTuber Oxhorn, where he comes down fairly hard on his stance that the Minutemen are the best hope for the Commonwealth. While I have the utmost respect for Oxhorn, I feel that he is too sympathetic to the Minutemen's agenda to be able to see the biggest flaw in their system. After all, the best intentions in the world don't make a lick of difference if your plan is simply doomed to fail. I don't think it's his fault, mind you. The game actually does a surprisingly good job of covering up this main flaw with a game mechanic. So Oxhorn is not at all lazy or naive for overlooking this flaw. But whether you noticed it or not, the Minutemen's biggest flaw is that they are too altruistic for their own good. The simple bottom line is the bottom line. When we get right down to it, the Minutemen are working on an unsustainable framework. The biggest flaw with the Minutemen is that they do not appear to charge money for their services, at least not in lore. This is the big flaw that Bethesda has hidden away with a game mechanic. While it is true that you, the player character, are paid somewhere in the ballpark of 100 caps for each settlement you assist in the name of the Minutemen, after logging an embarrassing number of hours into Fallout 4, I have come to the conclusion that this is purely a gameplay mechanic, and this financial transaction isn't happening in the lore any more so than if I used console commands to give myself the money. The most direct evidence that we have that this is purely a game mechanic comes when we fast travel to the castle with Kate as our companion. She has the following dialogue option upon arriving at the destination.
I don't understand these Minutemen. Why the hell would you bother helping a bunch of low-life farmers and settlers for free?
For free, she says. Of course, this line needs to be taken with a grain of salt. This line is clearly being delivered through the eyes of an in-game character, one with her own feelings, biases, opinions, and idiosyncrasies. More importantly, she has her own unique life experiences, which shape her perception of the world. So for all we know, she could have been falsely told that the Minutemen don't charge for their services by another in-game character who lied because he doesn't like the Minutemen. So Kate's line, while direct evidence, is still inconclusive to support the contention that the Minutemen do not actually charge for their services. Now, before anyone posts a comment, I would like to address a certain piece of evidence that I know everybody has on their minds right now. The terminal entry of Clint, the former Minuteman turned gunner. Since I know everyone will post a comment if I don't nip this in the bud, I want to explain now that I do not consider Clint's turning to be probative evidence one way or another. In his terminal, he explains that he joined the Gunners because, and I quote, "If you want to bring order out of the chaos, you need strength to do it. The Minutemen don't have it anymore, the Gunners do." This, however, is not probative evidence because he does not specify exactly what strength he is referring to. Is he talking about financial security, or is he talking about strong leadership and faction unity? My theory is that he is referring to the latter. Bear in mind that he says the Minutemen don't have the strength that is needed anymore. The key word being anymore. He says that the Minutemen used to have the strength that was needed, but they don't anymore. If he's referring to financial security, then that means that the Minutemen used to charge for their services, but don't anymore, which makes absolutely no sense. On the other hand, if Clint is referring to faction unity and leadership strength, then that gels nicely with what we already know about the history of the Minutemen. Clint is referred to by Colonel Hollis as being a 10-year veteran of the Minutemen. We know that General Joe Becker was killed 5 years before the events of the game. This means that Clint enlisted with the Minutemen 5 years before Becker's death, making it extremely likely that Clint joined up at the apex of Becker's leadership. We know from the exposition given to us by Preston Garvey and Ronnie Shaw that leadership strength and faction unity is precisely what General Becker had in spades, and what the Minutemen lost in droves after his death.
I guess General Becker was able to keep a lid on it, keep everyone more or less on the same team. But after he was killed, it all came out in the open.
General Becker used to run the Minutemen, the last real leader we ever had. After he died, there wasn't anybody left with the guts and brains to pull things together.
So it makes sense that this is what Clint saw in the Minutemen when he first joined up, but no longer saw any post-Becker Minutemen. Therefore, because Clint does not have an opinion one way or another on the Minutemen's charging for their services, I will not consider his terminal entry as having any probative value in this discussion. To get more direct evidence as to whether the Minutemen get paid for their protection, we have to turn to what we directly observe in-game when the player character interacts with settlers on the Minutemen's behalf. Although the player character receives some caps when you report your success to the settlers, there is nothing in the dialogue with the settlers suggesting that they're the ones paying you.
You find those raiders?
Yeah, I took care of them.
No kidding? That's the best piece of news we've had around here for a good long time. So we've been talking. We decided if you came through for us, we'd join up with the Minutemen again. If we want things to get better, we've got to start helping each other. So, we're in. You can count on us if you need help down the line. Thanks again, friend.
This is in stark contrast with when you meet Preston Garvey for the first time, when his dialogue confirms in no uncertain terms that he is transferring something of material wealth to you.
Listen, when we first met, you said we owed you for helping us out. I guess you've earned it. So here. It may not be a chest full of emeralds, but it'll have to do.
Also, notice the order of events. In addition to the fact that the settler doesn't acknowledge paying you, notice how you get the money before the settler even starts talking, whereas most other dialogues in the game have you getting the money after the settler finishes his line. lending further credence that this inclusion of payment was actually a last-minute addition to the Minutemen quests, and isn't meant to be happening in lore. Now, that is still not definitive proof that the payment isn't happening in lore. I can go to the grocery store and swipe my debit card at one of their card readers without saying a word. I don't have to say out loud that I'm paying them, but payment is still happening. However, what actually sealed it for me was this specific incarnation of the quest, the first step. I'm on my way to 10 Pines Bluff. However, in this playthrough, I had already taken out Jared, the raider leader of Convergia Assembly Plant, before I went to 10 Pines Bluff. Now, when I arrived at 10 Pines Bluff, the conversation began exactly as you'd expect. We don't need more trouble, I'm with the Minutemen, bad business after Quincy, blah blah blah. But notice what happens when I actually get the job to kill the raiders.
We know where they're coming from, but we can't go up against a gang like that.
I took care of some raiders earlier.
No kidding? That's the best piece of news we've had around here for a good long time. You know what? I'm gonna take a chance on you. If we want things to get better, we've got to start helping each other. So, we're in. You can count on us if you need help down the line. Thanks again, friend.
Notice the order of events. I get the job to kill the raiders. Then I get paid and get control of the workshop. Then I tell the settlers that I already took care of the raiders. And then he expresses his gratitude and agrees to join up with the Minutemen. Although I am getting paid, the settler clearly is not the one paying me, because he doesn't even know yet that I had already taken care of the raiders. The omniscient game engine knows that, but the settler doesn't. This is in stark contrast to other jobs I can do in the game that always send me to the same location and therefore allow the possibility that I may have already done the legwork for the job. Take, for instance, this segment where I obtain a job from Daisy and Goodneighbor to clear out the Boston Library of super mutants. I had already cleared out the mutants before coming to Goodneighbor. Watch what happens when I tell her that the job has already been completed.
Actually, I already took care of those super mutants.
You did? Huh. Now that's service for you. Here's your money. Oh, and why don't you take this old book of mine? Been holding on to it for a while, if you ever happen to go back there.
Notice, I only get paid after I tell her that I did the job. Clearly it is Daisy who is paying me, rather than some caps being magically deposited into my pocket by some omnipresent payment god. But even if you put your foot down and insist that the sole survivor is being paid in lore for his services as a Minuteman, one thing is certain: the Minutemen certainly do not expect payment for their services, and there is no option in the game, unless you play with mods, which aren't canon anyway, to demand payment up front for your services. Again, this is in stark contrast with nearly every other odd job you can do in the game, where you are not only are offered some money at the outset to do the job, but you can even haggle for more money if you have a high enough charisma stat.
Excuse me.
Looking to earn some caps? I could use a hand here if you're all done gawking, you know.
I could probably help for a few caps extra.
You get those lumbering brutes out of there, I'll pay you 200 caps.
I don't think that's enough money to cover clearing out a whole building.
This is also in stark contrast with meeting Preston Garvey for the first time, where you have the option of requesting compensation for your rescue efforts.
You owe me.
Yeah, sure thing. I'll give you my chest full of emeralds just as soon as we're out of this mess.
God damn it. Furthermore, notice how Preston scoffs at the way you, quite reasonably, expect payment for putting your life on the line for a group of strangers you don't even know. Although such an expectation is perfectly reasonable, It is clear that Preston does not see that as embodying the spirit of the Minutemen. This is further evidenced if you were to tell him that you didn't help the group for money. This, not just the rescue itself, is what causes Preston to see some of his old companions in you.
I didn't do it for money.
Hey, sorry. I'm used to everyone being in it only for themselves. You know, you remind me of my friends. The other Minutemen. The ones who gave their lives for something bigger than themselves.
Now that I have hopefully proven beyond doubt that the Minutemen do not receive nor expect payment for their services, some of you might reasonably wonder, well, how exactly does that make them so inherently flawed? If anything, doesn't that make them even more altruistic? Does it make them altruistic? Absolutely. Does such free protection garner a buttload of hero worship and gratitude from the settlers? Absolutely.
You guys are the best. Keep fighting the good fight, okay? You're one of the good guys.
But when you really get down to it, that doesn't detract from the fact that this is a post-apocalyptic wasteland and survival is everyone's top priority. At the end of the day, the simple bottom line is that gratitude doesn't pay the bills. At the end of the day, people still need food, water, clothes, and shelter, whether we like it or not. It would be nice if we could do without all this stuff, but sadly that's just not the way things work. Now, in the real world, we have police forces who protect us for free. Unless you're Daniel Shaver. However, they are owned and operated by our governments, who collect taxes from their citizens. So that's how those cops put food on the table. They aren't doing without money, they're just getting their money through different means than directly charging their clients. In the post-apocalyptic world of Fallout, however, no such system exists except in a handful of self-sustained city-states like Diamond City and Goodneighbor. Everywhere else, no government, no taxes. No taxes, no money unless you charge for your services. No money, no sustained living. It's as simple as that. This necessity, the need to have money to survive, is directly evidenced by the secret terminal entries in the village of Covenant. They are offering goods at an obscene discount in order to entice more people to take their safe test so they can get more test subjects for their hideous experiments to try and find a means of identifying synths. One of the secret terminal entries says outright that they are operating on a net loss. And while they have a noble goal, assuming you hate synths with a passion of 1,000 suns and consider synth genocide at the expense of countless human lives to be a noble goal, the nobility of their goal is not going to do them one lick of good if they simply can't afford to keep up the ruse. Indeed, even with the Minutemen, we see direct evidence that the Minutemen lifestyle is unsustainable. The most direct evidence of this comes from Libertalia. There, we see former Minuteman James Wire acknowledges that he is a raider. His logic effectively boils down to, hey, I may not have the hero worship I used to have, but at least I have food in my belly. Indeed, some of the earlier terminal entries actually yield some sympathy for these raiders at Libertalia. See, I respect the hell out of Oxhorn, and I hope that in 5 years I might be a 10th as good at in-depth story analysis as he is. But Oxy, you are 100% full of crap when you say this. Outside of the whole raider world, there are people farming, trading, buying, and selling without having to resort to being raiders. In fact, the only reason James Wire and his raiders at Libertalia are rolling in the dough is because somewhere there was a farmer who grew some tomatoes and sold them for a profit. Without settlers and wastelanders who choose not to become raiders, raiders can't exist. They are wholly dependent on settlers and tradesmen. Oxhorn? Shut up! I respect you like nobody's business, but you really need to shut up. Did you not even read those terminal entries before his last one? Because it very clearly says that they tried their hand at earning an honest living by becoming mercenaries and protecting caravan traders. Unlike the Minutemen, however, they actually charged money for their services in the hopes that such a quid pro quo system would be sustainable while still earning a living honestly and ethically. They tried that, and it simply didn't work. See, Oxhorn may argue that raiders can only exist at the expense of honest workers. The story of James Wire suggests the complete opposite. That honest professions like farming and trading can only exist if there are clients and customers out there who are willing to pay the caps that they rightfully owe. What recourse do you have when those clients who have hired you simply refuse to pay? Your only recourse is to take the matter into your own hands. Libertalia isn't even the only evidence we have in the game of when this sort of behavior compels violent action. Shortly after meeting the Minutemen on our way to Diamond City for the first time, 99% of us will come across the Drumlin Diner and the quest Order Up. There, Trudy makes no effort to contest the fact that she and her son legitimately owe some money to Wolfgang. Instead, she refuses to pay what she owes solely on the grounds that the chems her son bought had some adverse health effects that, and let's be honest here, she probably knew full well was likely to happen. Honestly, isn't that kind of like a smoker in our world suing the tobacco company because the cigarettes gave him cancer? So what's Wolfgang supposed to do? If you can't convince Trudy to pay peacefully, his only recourse is to go in guns blazing. See, Libertalia and Drumlin Diner both highlight another major problem with the post-war Commonwealth that the Minutemen don't even try to address, yet which is still part of the problem. In addition to the lack of a tax-funded police force, there is also the lack of a civil court system. In the real world, if someone owes you money and they won't pay, you can take them to court over the debt. The judge will enter a judgment ordering them to pay, and if they still refuse to pay after that, the sheriff will come into his house and seize his assets and garnish his wages until the judgment is satisfied. There's no need to resort to raider activity to collect what is rightfully owed to you. The keyword being rightfully. But in the post-apocalyptic world of Fallout, no such peaceful resolution of disputes is possible. If you're owed money and the debtor defaults, your only means of enforcing the debt is your own strong arm. And that transitions me into my final point of this video, going exclusively on what we are given in the game and lore. The best hope for humanity is not the Minutemen. It's not the Railroad. It's not the Institute. It's not the Brotherhood of Steel. And it's not even the Gunners. Rather, our best chance for a better tomorrow lies in the one faction we cannot interact with a single member of, the Commonwealth Provisional Government. If the CPG ever gets a constitution written and finalized, then they can provide every settlement in the Commonwealth a quality of life on par with Diamond City. We can have a police force that is supported by taxes and also a court system, both criminal and civil, to resolve disputes peacefully without needing to resort to vigilante activity. That actually brings me back to the often asked question among Fallout fans. What will the canon ending to Fallout 4's main quest be? Who will be the canon winner of the four-way war of the Commonwealth? My guess is that a new CPG will be the canon winner. Granted, we do not have the option of joining the CPG in the game, unlike Fallout New Vegas, where the New California Republic is a faction we can choose to end the game with. However, I would postulate that we select the CPG ending anytime we blow up the Institute. A lot of people have criticized the ending of Fallout 4 because 3 out of the 4 endings are all the same. The only way to get a different ending is to side with the Institute. Well, what if that was actually intentional on Bethesda's part? What if it was meant to be a subtle clue as to what the true canon ending will be? For example, an often asked question about Fallout lore is, who launched the first bomb during the Great War? The official canon answer to that question is, it doesn't matter, because all parties lost regardless. Likewise, I believe that the only canon ending to Fallout 4 is that the Institute gets blown up. Who exactly does the honors? Is it the Minutemen, the Railroad, the Brotherhood of Steel? My guess is that the official canon answer to that question will be, it doesn't matter. The only thing that will truly matter is that the Institute is destroyed. Then, with the guys who previously sabotaged the CPG now out of the picture, the people of the Commonwealth will decide to give it the old college try one more time. A constitution will be decided on, and a new, stable government will rise from the ashes. But, as Oxhorn often puts it, that is just one man's humble opinion. What do you guys think? And that'll do it for today. If you guys would like to hear more in-depth story analysis for your favorite games, be sure to like this video, share it with your friends, and hit that subscribe button. Also, check out some of the Let's Plays I also do on this channel, where I focus less on in-depth story analysis and more on lighthearted commentary with a great sense of humor and just having a good time. In the meantime, however, I'm Acerthorn, and I'll see you guys later.